next one for
No, I want to do it now, and then I'll get
Okay.
out of your hair.
You are welcome.
I'm back because of Eagles Cove. And in my opinion, my rights are being violated by Eagle Cove and consequently by the county for not making Eagle Cove do what they should have done. And as an example, conditions of approval before issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance. And number one is enhanced screening immediately across from Reed Road and Bath Road, residential homes. Then it says landscaping and buffering to be implemented and completed in phase one. I did not know that that's what he was supposed to do in phase one until last fall when I applied for a FOIA for all the information on Eagles Cove, and this was one of your minutes from the Planning Commission meeting. So this guy has not been in compliance since day one because his special use permit would have expired within 6 months if he didn't apply for an extension. That first 6 months, they were back there where phase was gonna be. They were cutting down trees and clearing them. And my neighbor, who is quite allergic to smoke, he was back there burning brush and stuff. She raised Cain with him about doing that. So, in my opinion, phase one started when he was back in there within the first 6 months, which is 14 years ago. What I want is what it would have looked like when he planted 14 years ago, that 14 years worth of growth in there, because I would have probably had the screening by then. In my opinion, the county doesn't have enough people in the community department. I think they should have a full-time director and another code enforcer. Now, Greg has told me in the past they can't afford all that stuff. I don't know why you have these rules in your zoning if you're not going to enforce them. What sense does that make? I know Pete is only part-time. I think you should have a full-time one and make him part-time code enforcer. Your current code enforcer is out there writing residents up for junk and debris. Now, to me, special use permits ought to have priority over junk and debris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, will you fill out one of those? He did, I think.
Yeah, we've got it
Okay.
in here, we'll pass it down.
Too good.
Any other calls to the public? All right, which brings us to Treasurer's Monthly Reports. Julie?
Good evening. Busy month. March is settling with the local units after they wrap up their collection the end of February. We have a handful of units that we're still trying to fine tune the settlement and finish up, but we're just about set on that. April 2nd was foreclosure day. I was happy to see only 8 properties foreclosed on, which is a nice small number. Got 14 homeowners that we did give extensions to, and they're all following through on their part of things as far as making partial payments and showing that their effort is there. So 8 parcels, and I'm sorry I didn't include that report for you. I can get it to you, or definitely next month can get you the list of properties. Also, this last week with the auditors here, we were busy getting them the requested paperwork that they needed for audit. So, believe so far all set on those items. And I did include the dog license report with your things. So we're at almost, I know this number was from last Friday, so 33,370 or so. We're seeing a couple every day, and now they're paying the late fee. So we do get a little extra income from that late fee being charged.
And we budgeted 80,000?
Somewhere right in there. I think it's 70 something.
So far,
It's 80.
yeah, so far 45,000, 45,090 or 593 according to that report. So
So we got a little ways to go.
we got a ways to go. Yeah.
Any ideas for next year, or?
I believe it'll continue the same, but hopefully people will,
Next year, we're gonna have to look at doing something electronically. We're gonna have to find, instead of people coming in, we're gonna have to find a way to do that either through the updated BSNA system or some kind of web portal assistance that we can also have the vets log in and help with. But we have a year to figure it out.
Yeah, because I almost feel like the staff time that your staff is putting in, if we added up those hours, are we even coming ahead?
yeah.
You
It was pretty crazy there on,
Right,
yeah,
so-
in February. You know, people do have the opportunity we can do it over the phone for them and mail them the license. That saved a lot of people a trip in, especially.
But I mean, your time.
Our
like,
time.
If we spend 20,000 in salaries to get 30, I don't know what that number is, but
Right.
something to think about, I guess.
Yeah, last year we paid out approximately 13,000 to the other units that were selling the licenses. And this year we won't have that payout to them as we have in the past. But yeah, I think this first year is just people getting used to the change. Getting used to the change, and once they catch on, next year could be slightly different, I hope. But, yeah,
So
well,
would
we
it-
can look at some other ideas, there are other options. They perhaps could do it online as long as their rabies is up to date, and we have proof that their rabies is up to date. That's the thing, we gotta keep track of that stuff.
All right. Anybody have anything else? Anything else, Julie, or?
I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Which brings us to our one agenda item. I would look for a motion to approve the proposals for the district court building remodel and repairs not to exceed $320,754.25. Support.
So we had budgeted about $350,000 of ARPA funds and this is the last of our ARPA funds, to work on this project in addition to a couple of things at the jail that you've already approved. And we will have a little extra, I believe, because this came under what we had projected. But we've had some problems with sewer pipes and sewer smell. The building was built around 1970. The pipes have started cracking inside, so we need to replace the remaining pipes that we have not already replaced in there, which is about $26,500 worth of work. The lighting, we project that if we upgrade the lighting while we're in there working, that we can save about $12,000 annually from our electrical cost. Right now it's about $25,000, it'll drop down to $13,000. There's a $5,000 rebate from consumers for upgrading the electrical, which we'll receive back once we complete the project. Over the course of the years, because of these sewer pipes that have cracked and leaked, because of leaks in the roof, which the roof was repaired last year, several of the ceiling tiles on all 3 floors have become discolored and corroded in certain areas where they have leak stains. So we want to replace those as well. And then the carpet has not been redone since the mid-1980s. And so we'll do some carpet paint and repairs to the bathrooms. Particularly the public bathrooms are particularly bad.
All right. Sounds like a good project.
Yeah.
Certainly well needed.
It's just a little, I mean, I think if we spend some money upgrading and maintaining it, it'll last, you know, indefinitely. Just gotta make sure that we fix those things.
Right, and it's a public building, so we want it to have a certain level of repair.
Yep.
Gary picked up some nice carpet, so I saw that.
And I've worked with the chief judge on all of it, so we're.
Well, yeah, I mean, all due respect, we should give our courts a decent place to do their business, so. All right, anything else on that remodel? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. That moves forward to Wednesday. Brings us to our second call to the public, and we are adjourned.
This next meeting, if you will, I'll call the meeting to order for the Economic and Fiscal Development Committee. If you will stand and say the pledge with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, that brings us to our first call to the public. Is there anyone who wishes to address the Economic and Physical Development Committee? Hearing none, that will bring us to Pete Preston, Community Development Monthly Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had 16 building permits, 19 zoning permits, and 26 code enforcement actions. Under the building permits, there were 2 new housing starts and some commercial remodel and alterations on there. We expect the market to be picking back up here in April for new housing starts. As it concerns code enforcement, you will find on there there's some questions about a Church Road property and a burnout there. That property down in Perry Township has been red tagged as an unsafe structure, and we anticipate to follow up in about 2 weeks in order to start issuing citations. We've also had some other activities involving red tagging buildings that did not have special land uses. And I can address Mr. Bauer's comments if you'd like me to.
Sure.
That particular property, yes, the initial special use permit was done in 2010. There were some amendments thereafter that did not involve landscaping. I did meet with Jerry Atkinson, who is the owner of the campground, drove through the site, did look at the plans that were initially done there, and yes, there's hardly any vegetation on the berm that is approximately 2 to 3 feet higher than even shown on our site plan. However, finding out that Mr. Atkinson did plant spruce trees throughout there. However, Mr. Bauer did not necessarily like those trees and wish to have arborvitae. I don't know if you folks are used to seeing the arborvitae around cell phone tower sites, but the deer love them, even though they're supposed to be deer tolerant. So Mr. Atkinson and I talked, we're going to go back to the original landscaping plan that was set forth on that site. As far as the time differentiation there, the Planning Commission enforcement group, we have a subcommittee that would go out. They were out there. However, Mr. Atkinson at that time was going through either amendments to the site plans or new uses on there. He built the berm 2 to 3 feet higher, and he's always worked well. I don't know if any of you have been to that site, but I'd say it's one of the nicer sites out there when it comes to campground. But we'll continue to work with the owner. However, Mr. Bauer wants me to go back in time and make their 14 years of growth there, or have the applicant applicant implement something such as a screening, a fence. I have nothing in my original approval that indicate that. If I was to go beyond the planning commission, then I would be stepping out on a limb beyond a board that makes those decisions. If Mr. Atkinson is changing his special use permit and comes back, I'm sure the issue will be taken up again with the county planning commission.
So is he gonna plant some trees?
Yes. Yes, he's going to go back to the original spruce trees through there.
Well,
and
nobody's planting spruce trees, they all got blights, they're all gonna die.
Well, we'll work with him on the species and stuff, but if those original trees were allowed to grow or die, at that point, we had the enforcement tools to have him remedy that. Once he involved himself to plant those arborvitae, he was agreeing to have the landscaping in that form or fashion. But I told Jerry we need to go back to what the planning commission approved in case he sells the property. No more side agreements with neighbors.
I didn't know if you knew all the blue spruce and the white spruce and all that got a blight.
You give me a recommendation for landscaping and we'll see what we can do.
I don't know if you knew that, did you know
No,
that they all got blights? and
No,
they're all-
I got enough on my plate.
Well, I don't know if you've seen, spruce trees around the county or anything, they're completely dead.
No, I have not,
And I think we even had some here in the front of the courthouse that looked sick and they cut them down. They weren't that bad, but
They had some in parks, I know they had taken care of.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I think I mentioned that for 6 months.
Yeah, I got one in my place, they run the spectrum, run the wire right through the tree and it's completely dead now. I thought they did, but I called them and complained, but they didn't do nothing either, so. Just everybody passes the buck, I know, so.
We will
I run
continue-
into it every day,
we will continue to work with both property owners.
yeah. You gotta plant a tree that it's not gonna die. So,
That's all I have unless anybody has any other questions for me.
Thanks.
We'll talk more, but thank you for your help on the matter we worked on last week. I don't know if you want to, I think there's some more investigation that needs to be done before we have
Absolutely.
a public conversation about that, but at least for now, it has been remedied and hoping that we can get some resolution on that, so thank you for that.
Our department appreciates the assistance from other departments.
There you go. Okay. That brings us to our agenda items. I would entertain a motion to approve the 2024 total equalized valuation in resolution 240402 and authorize the board chair and county clerk to execute the L4024, the L4037, and any necessary documents.
Move it, move it forward.
I'll support. Any discussion?
Yes. Pete,
Let me-
I have a question, or do you want to?
Let me give you just the broad strokes of it before we get into the specific questions. So the equalized value has increased, so last year it was 3.2 billion, this year it's 3.6 billion. That's an increase of about $356 million. So what that means is that our valuations are going up, because as you can see in my report, they were 2.7 billion, 3 billion, and they keep escalating. However, our taxable value is declining slightly because we will take in about $375,000 of additional new tax revenue this year. So usually we take in about 300,000, and then we got a big boost at one point and took in $1 million. Then it dropped down to 600,000, and now it's down to about 375,000 for this year. And it has a lot to do with solar farm depreciation as a result of it. So we are getting close to our normal increase of about $300,000 a year, more or less.
Okay, so that total equalized value, that comes from all the assessing units, all the local units, right? Or
Yes.
from the local units. So, do you make adjustments or balance to that throughout the year?
That will be reported through final state equalization in May.
Okay,
And then it could be impacted by July or December board of actions or
Mhm.
tax tribunals that are experienced. But with our reporting in our database, it always reports back to that early May final equalization with the state of Michigan. But this is not the hard number that Julie will report on with taxable value at the end of the year because of all those other changes throughout the year.
okay, so when we make those changes, so like in Livingston County, I have to balance to the treasurer. Do we do that here?
Balance to the treasurer as far as the assessment.
Yes. I have to run a miscellaneous totals and statistics and balance that to the treasurer every time I make an adjustment.
Equalization, well, that's different counties, as I always say, we work from the same rule book, so we all do it differently. So you will find local units that will balance with their assessor, and then the treasurer will balance up to the county treasurer. The local will balance up to the county. So I'm not familiar with Livingston County, but our equalization department does stay in balance with the treasurer when the initial values are given over. That is also translated. We balance with the assessor balances with their treasurer balances with Julie, and then we double check each other at some points along the year. But if we have a township that does one July border review action, we at equalization get those numbers, and then if it affects taxable value, then the county treasurer will be given those.
Okay. All right.
What we find is that there's some county offices that are overly involved in local units, and then there's some county offices that are absolutely hands-off. We are essentially right in the middle somewhere.
So in the finance office, we should be able to know exactly what's coming in. Because this is just an estimate, right? So how can we know? My question is, how can we know in the finance office for our budgeting exactly what's coming in?
Well, you would have a historical trend of what July border review actions and December border review actions would be. For example, for years, we've dealt with veterans being exempted from property taxes. Well, now there's movement to actually reimburse the local and the county for that loss of revenue from disabled veterans.
I'll believe that when I see it.
The next step will possibly be poverty as well to reimburse. This all falls, it's kind of trending from when they were getting rid of personal property tax to kind of reimburse local units for that loss. That I'm on tape, so that hasn't been worked out the best.
Well, I'll be on tape saying I'll believe it when I see it, but still, I'm just trying to figure out why. So we know what those July border reviews are historically, but as soon as we're done with the July border review, can't we keep a running?
Well, yeah, so if a local unit had July border reviews, say they had incorrectly reported property, they thought there was a $200,000 house there, and there was not. And so in the March board review, they've done a tax assessed and taxable value calculation. That assessor would take that through July border review and report to Julie and to equalization, and we'd make those changes in our system. So yes, you would kind of have a running tally of where things were at.
Okay.
Following settlement or not, I shouldn't use the word settlement.
Border review.
Yeah, following our collaboration and balancing at the end. So conceivably, every August 1st and every January 1st, you would have a good idea what July and December losses were, or additions in that respect.
Oh, true. Or like uncappings, those.
Absolutely, those are the other things that happen throughout the year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? All in favor of moving this to Wednesday night, signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye, all opposed, same. That brings us to item D. I entertain a motion to approve the rehabilitation mortgage discharge for Jacqueline Castleberry of 1932 Kilbourne Street, Owasso.
Move it forward.
Support?
So this is part of a old program that they've now paid that off, and so
questions? All in favor of moving this forward, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same. Item C, I entertain a motion to accept and place on file the 2023 Register of Deeds Annual Report as presented.
Support. Move forward.
That's a motion, and I'll make the support.
So.
You gotta make the motion, yeah.
So Lori could not be here with us tonight. She was conducting an interview at 5 o'clock for a new employee, but she will be here with us on Wednesday to present her report as the other departments have.
All right, great. All in favor of moving this to Wednesday night, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same. That brings us to item D. I entertain a motion to approve Resolution 240404, approving the Brownfield Plan.
I'll make the motion.
I'll support.
So this one's a little different than what we did last time. So the last one was a county brownfield in which we were doing something inside the city of Owasso. And the city of Owasso's Brownfield Redevelopment Board had to concur with us. Owasso is the only one that has their own brownfield authority locally. Everyone else who wants to do a brownfield redevelopment plan must come through the county to do it. So this is a plan in Durand for the old Simplicity building for a brownfield redevelopment. The land bank knocked down that building as part of the round one funds that we received after creating the land bank. And now we have plans to rehab that building, or that area, and put a building on it. And so the city of Durand would like to capture the taxes as part of their repayment. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Sam from AKT Peerless, who prepares these documents for us, to hit a few highlights for you.
Thank you, Brian, and good evening, everyone. Again, Samantha Marias, Vice President of Economic Development Services with AKT Peerless. We assisted the city of Durand in preparing this brownfield plan for the Board of Commissioners' consideration on Wednesday. Just a little bit of background. In 2021, the building at 209 Oak Street suffered a partial building collapse that caused the city to have to remediate that and spend $86,400. Throughout that time, the city had been actively marketing the property and still continue to actively market it for redevelopment. They are currently under a purchase agreement with a local business, J&J Ag Parts. In conjunction with that, in this partnership with the city and with the prospective purchaser, we were able to secure a $25,000 EAGLE grant that went to doing a phase 1 environmental site assessment, which would protect the future property purchaser from federal liability for the environmental conditions on the site. EAGLE also funded a phase 2 subsurface investigation to understand really what was going on with that building. And then finally to prepare a baseline environmental site assessment, which gives the prospective property purchaser their Michigan liability from environmental contamination. At that same time, the city of Durand, the prospective purchaser, and I worked together to prepare an MEDC revitalization and placemaking grant. The grant was structured in a way that we were going to attempt to rehab that site. Unfortunately, we were not selected to receive funding for that, so we kind of pivoted and looked at what we now had from the environmental data versus what really was going to work on that site. And there's a way we can change the building layout to maybe work away some of the extreme costs of those environmental concerns. So that's when we engaged with the county land bank, and the land bank supported $109,000 to demolish that building. And in conjunction, the city of Durand passed a resolution to commit up to $200,000, whatever that remaining difference was. So in total, for the cost of the building demolition, that was $278,000. And overall, inclusive of the difference between what the city has paid with the emergency demolition, their costs outside of the blight elimination grant and soft costs associated with that project, they have spent $291,840. So the goal of this brownfield plan is to reimburse the city first for those costs incurred, but also included in the plan, because we do have that environmental data, are costs that we believe that a future developer may incur on that site. So the first goal is to repay the city, and second, if the prospective property purchaser or soon-to-be property owner enters into a reimbursement agreement, they may be repaid for their additional costs of remediating the site as well. Currently, that property's taxable value is 0. You have statutorily 5 years to begin that capture clock. That's why you see this plan doesn't begin capture until 2029. Eagle grants typically run 2 years, but if you have a vapor mitigation concern, which we do on this site, they're extended up to 3 years, so we're counting kind of 3-year grant cycle plus 2 years of construction. If there's a point in time where, you know, they're able to construct quicker, we can start that capture clock whenever we feel is necessary. We believe, we've worked with the City of Durand's assessor, that estimated post-development taxable value on this property is about $523,000. The total length of the plan is 29 years, which does include 5 years of local brownfield revolving fund capture, which is anticipated that will be $108,000, and then administrative capture, or strike that, reverse it. Admin fee is $108,000, and LBRF $177,645. Based on the projections, the city should be repaid for their costs of eligible activities within year 14.
And so the local brownfield board, or the county brownfield board has already approved this, and then the funds that they were talking about for the revolving fund will go to support county brownfield activities. So that the money that the brownfield authority receives here will be able to use for other projects throughout the county as part of the revolving fund.
And the City of Durand on March 18th passed a resolution of concurrence and resolution of understanding for the project. Well, as Brian mentioned, they don't have their own BRA, they still must show the local support through those resolutions, so they're excited, we're excited.
Sounds great.
So Durand's getting some of the money back that they get? I mean,
Yes.
They will get repaid for their expenses.
oh,
So they'll, 86,000 and plus 179 and a couple of other things, because the City of Durand bore the expense of tearing down the wooden structure that was there, and then they kicked in 179,000 towards the tear down of the building, and so this is just a cost recapture for them to receive the additional funds they invested.
Yeah, so the total for demolition costs is $291,840, and also the cost to prepare the brownfield plan, so it's around $300,000 that they can recapture to cover their expenses.
And without a brownfield redevelopment, you know, it's really cost prohibitive for smaller cities like Durand to be able to do any kind of redevelopment of contaminated sites like this. Because there are heavy metal, is it heavy metal contamination? There are contaminations from the factory that is
Yeah,
there.
and there's soil gas concerns on the corner of the property, so we believe that if we can push the building kind of closer to the depot, I don't know my north, south, east, and west because it's like an X here.
It'd be further back, so it'd be towards the east instead of right on the property.
Yes, then we'll be
Upfront.
able to site plan away some of the environmental concerns. We know that the soils are contaminated. Anything that is taken off of that site will need to go to a type 2 landfill, be characterized, but I think there's a possibility we can work away some of the volatile soil gas concerns.
Any questions?
Yeah, question, has there been determination whether there was any actual groundwater contamination due to that site, or is it, so far, we're just dealing with contaminated soils?
I believe primarily soils, but I will double check those tables before Wednesday. Don't believe there's any groundwater issues.
Because that can introduce a whole new
Yeah, absolutely.
difficult issue to deal with if it's migrating
Absolutely.
offsite.
Okay, if there are no further questions, all in favor of moving this to Wednesday? I think of where we were in the process here. All in favor of moving this forward to Wednesday, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you so much, Sam, for being here. That brings us to our last call to the public. Going once, going twice, seeing none. Motion to adjourn? We're adjourned. There we go.